Hansard won't note your looks of
if there is, no one ever mentioned it to me, Senator, but I'll take that in mind. Yeah.
Secret accommodation. All right, I might follow up on the marketing question, because I don't know that that's really been teased out much. Can you just, I missed it because you were moving fairly quickly, the scale of the cuts to your internal marketing budget? You had two different numbers you put to us.
Yeah, I'll have to check that, Senator, and possibly take that on.
Rough numbers are fine, but I just want to go into.
Yeah, I think it's about a $1.2 million saving overall, Senator.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but you broke it out over your TV and radio divisions, is that right?
Yeah. Yes, that's right. In a way, we have. If you look at where the marketing has been for the ABC, you've had a core in television marketing and publicity. But then in radio, you've actually had more people who have worked all around the country. And as we said to Senator McKenzie, we appreciate the importance of that local radio commitment. But we are looking at how we get the best bang for our buck in marketing.
Were these foreshadowed, or did they fall out of the Lewis review, or were they a foot early?
Well, there were two things, Senator. When we appointed the new Director of Marketing earlier in the year and did flip the model. The model was all the marketing resources were in the divisions, and we decided that we would centralise them in the way that had happened at the ABC in the past. I think our question then was more on how do you maximise the effectiveness of the spend and how do you prioritise it, so you're not doing lots and lots of little marketing everywhere, but making sure that your investment is really around the priority areas. I think then when the funding cut became due, and then when we looked at the Lewis review, is marketing a support service area? Well, it is, and so it came under the same rigorous scrutiny as everything else.
All right. Did it reflect government policy more broadly across the public sector, though?
Well, this is what really emerged in May. I think it didn't get a lot of visibility at the time. There was a previous question, I think, on notice. Mr. Millett might be able to guide me on this, but that talked about how many people we had working in marketing and promotions. And
that
of course,
was rolled right across the public service.
Well, I think we were asked the question, but every other government department agency was asked the question. And we, of course, being a media organisation, even though we have the smallest investment in marketing than anyone, and I think the Lewis findings were that we were more efficient in marketing, say, than SBS. They didn't, this was an area that the government cut funding across the board based on what your level of investment was. It was just a across-the-board clip. And so that kind of put us on the back foot with our marketing spend anyway. And then when we looked at the detail of Lewis and then the size of the cut was becoming due, that, of course, was an area we needed to focus on.
All right. But that was part of the so-called down payment, the 1% hit?
Yes, it was. Well, actually, no, it wasn't actually part of the 1%. There were three elements in our budget cut in May. The 1%, the Australia network cut, and then this marketing thing. But it was $400,000 this year, and I think it's $800,000 in a full year.
It all adds up, doesn't it? Could we go to the PwC consultancy that's been afoot as well? Because I think that's had a bit less profile than the Lewis efficiency review. Can you just take us back to how that originated and how long it's been afoot for?
Yes, it's no longer afoot. They were with us for some months. And I think what we did was I knew that we needed to find the sufficiency money, and I thought we needed to bring in the horsepower to help work through the efficiency report finding, which was really, as we said, a number of areas of finding to make that kind of very concrete and very real for us. And so they had experts in property, experts in procurement, experts in organisational structure and layers that exist in organisations working with us for a period of some months to help us fine-tune the business cases that we needed in order to be able to start embarking on this change. And I think we've said we've got about 40 change projects that are operating at the moment.
Okay, so they had access to drafts of the Lewis review and they were effectively doing some kind of audit?
No, it was separate to that. When we say drafts of the Lewis review, really the ABC saw one, in a sense, the final, what's viewed as, I call the final draft of the Lewis review, which landed April. And so they were working off that, but they had no engagement back with the department and back with Mr. Lewis. They were really working with us.
Okay. And its terms of reference related to what? Were they ever
efficiency?
made public?
Well, really, finding, helping us find models to drive efficiencies in the organisation.
Okay.
Yeah, which included the areas that you mentioned earlier, procurement.
Sure. So it was like extracting teeth, but we eventually got a redacted copy of the Lewis Review. Would you now commit to releasing the work that PwC did for you?
No, I think, again, that was work that was, they were really internal working papers for us, and in a way testing and developing business models as they have emerged. And so I think that's an internal working document that would be the kind of document we don't normally release.
Okay. When did serious discussions, however you want to characterise that, with the government over cuts first start? Like, at what point were you made aware of the fact that the ABC was headed for significant budget cuts one way or another?
Well, look, I'm not sure I've got a precise date in mind, Senator, but I'll give you some of the chronology. I mean, I think we knew with the commissioning of the efficiency review that was going to try and identify areas of saving. And despite any arguments I might make, I suppose part of me thought if savings were found, even though I could make a very strong argument in the interest of our audience and taxpayers why that should be invested in the future of the ABC, that it's likely that some of that money would go. Then, of course, we saw in the budget the 1% described as a down payment, but as I said at the time, we didn't know. Unlike when you buy a house or a car, you make a down payment, you know what the final bill will be and when it's due. That was not known. And then we understood that there was an ERC process that was working its way through, and there were two elements to that, Senator, and I think I suggested this last time. There was a sense of the quantum, how much would be asked for over how many years, and then importantly, there was a question as to when that money would become due. And I also did make it clear that if the ABC, if the source of funds the ABC had used to invest in its future, efficiency savings effectively from support services were taken away from us, then we of course would have to look at content to find new areas, ways to invest. And so they were discussions that went on. I think they really started a period of time after the budget. But the final precision around the numbers and where they fell in which years really just happened around the time of the Minister's statement.
Okay. One of the Lewis Review's recommendations, if you could call it that, or findings, if you will, was to impose user charges for IView, and they have a couple of different models for paywalling different categories or different bandwidth or quality of content. Are you intending to implement those recommendations, or are you going to stay right away from that?
Yeah, it's an important question for us, Senator. There will be a mechanism that starts on IView, we think in the first quarter of next year, that will go into the ABC archive for content that is not within the IView free window and make it easy for audience members to, for a minimal charge, download that content, much as operates in the Google Play Store and the iTunes Store now. So if you want to watch Sea Change, at the moment you'd have to pay for that. You'd have to go to the ABC shop and buy that DVD, or if you could find it online, you could download that. But we'll make it easy for you to do that from IView.
Sorry, before you carry on, is there any content on IView that is paid for, like premium stuff or high bandwidth stuff at the moment, or is that a threshold we'll be crossing for the first time next year?
At the moment there's just one IView service.
Yeah.
And that is all free, and it operates basically around windows that we have negotiated for rights around different elements of content. That's not to say, and at times we will go back and renegotiate some rights. We have, you'll be pleased to know, Senator, for summer, some of the absolute classics of Australian comedy full series that we are putting up on IView free of charge. But there will be this click to own button that will appear on IView for some other content, but that will be new content that we're putting up. But no, we don't have, say, IView high definition. It is an important question for us. The cost involved of delivering IView in high definition is significantly higher in bandwidth than what you need to do to be able to deliver it to a phone or a tablet.
I understand that.
And increasingly, our audience is wanting that because they are using devices like Google Chromecast to watch our content on a big screen TV where the resolution
quite
is
a
not
significant threshold to cross, though, because nowhere on any of your existing platforms are you asking people to pay for content of any kind of quality or type or age. So this is a fairly significant threshold.
Yes, I'd agree.
It
is a significant issue.
If we come back in 10 years, how much of whatever IView evolves into will be paywalled once you've taken that step?
Yeah, we're not at that point, Senator. It's a matter that we need
We're just about to step over that point.
No. Well, with respect, Senator, this is not a matter that there's no recommendation for ABC management about this. There is no decision from the ABC board on it. I think there are some important public policy questions that you're raising. We are, I think, it's fair to say, coming under increasing demand for high-definition services from our audience members. There is at the moment money that has been allocated under the last triennial funding agreement for digital delivery. That funding expires at the end of the triennium, and we will be talking to government when the new triennium negotiation comes along for that funding to be renewed. If we don't have funding for digital delivery, given the two things that are going to happen, the increased level of demand in volume terms and the increased level of demand for the high quality delivery, that will have very significant cost impacts for us. And I think we will need to work through, A, can we afford it? B, if we could afford it, what would we cut in order to be able to afford it? Or C, is it like other media organisations have done, is there a basic model that we are delivering? So there's all that content which is free, but if in fact you want a premium version of that, there's a charge involved. I appreciate that is a threshold issue.
It's a big deal. You've told us probably at every estimates committee or every Senate inquiry that I think I've spoken to that the future, or not just to me, that anybody, that the future of the broadcaster is online.
Yes.
You've taken quite strong steps, I guess, as a part of your experience in Fairfax earlier about positioning the ABC for the digital future.
Yep.
And I think a lot of that has been very strategic and very smart. The future of the broadcaster is online, and we're about to start imposing a paywall on content. That's significant in the history of the broadcaster as a whole, I would suggest.
I agree with you, Senator, apart from the fact that we are not there yet. There's not a recommendation from the executive. It hasn't been determined by the board. This is yet another example in this report of areas to investigate. I appreciate it's an area to investigate.
I think you told us just earlier that you'd made a decision. If you're proposing, for example,
No, but the decision is very different. The decision.
Let me finish.
Yeah.
But if you're proposing to charge people for access to premium radio or TV content, there'd be riots.
Yeah, but
so
Senator,
what decisions have been made?
Well, the only decision that has been made is to make it easier for people to view our archive, an archive they are currently paying for. If you want to watch Sea Change, you've got to pay for it. No, there's no expectation that people can walk into the ABC shop and say, I pay my taxes, give me the free DVD. The audience has understood for decades that they pay for that archival content. We're just making it easier for them to do that. So I don't see that as a threshold issue at all.
Archival content is one, bandwidth is a second.
Well, but on the bandwidth, I suppose I'm simply saying, Senator, well, this is referenced by Mr Lewis. A decision has not been made by the ABC on it. I appreciate if a decision was made, it would be a significant issue.
Yeah.
But you seem to be implying that we are on the precipice and we've kind of done it. I'm saying to you that's not the case.
So there's, you referenced negotiations with government. And I understand also, you've made the point with great clarity at an earlier session that it doesn't cost the broadcaster anything if an additional person turns on a radio set, but it costs you if an additional person's dragging IP traffic down. So I get that, the bandwidth costs you. But you're going to be going to negotiations with government ministers who don't necessarily think you should be online at all and are being lobbied very heavily that you're competing with paywall content from other media providers. So you're not in a very strong negotiating position.
Well, I think there are two elements. Of course, any negotiation happens in a budgetary context. I understand that. But I'd say two things. The ABC has been the absolute leader in the... if you look at traditional media outlets who have successfully led audiences into the new digital future. I think the ABC has a very strong record on that. And when it comes to the leading catch-up service in the country, that was established and is still run by the ABC.
Big fan.
I must say I've had nothing but support from the Minister for the ABC's investment in online and mobile. He understands it's important to our future, and of course, as a Minister, he's deeply engaged in these issues and has been for a long period of time. So I don't accept your contention that the people who we will be making our case to have led to opposition for the ABC being in digital media services. In fact, this Parliament amended the ABC Act within the last year or so.
I recall the Coalition voted against that amendment. I'm just putting it to you.
No, I don't think that's correct, Senator. My understanding is the Coalition voted in favour of that. They voted against the Australian network provision, but not that. I understand that was carried unanimously, and I would be amazed, Senator, if any representative in either house here who was at least a bit engaged with their audiences wouldn't understand that their audiences love IView with 20 million plays a month, love ABC Online, the number 3 news site in the country, love ABC children's content. So I'd be very, very surprised if in fact we didn't have a receptive audience.
Looking for ways for you to monetise it, whether you want to do it or not.
Yeah, but then the question will be, I appreciate, I was just stopping your suggestion that there isn't support for the ABC and online and mobile. Money has been allocated in our current triennium for us to be able to deliver these services, recognising that we're not about to turn off radio and television. It's not as though you can migrate your cost from one to another. There is legitimate audience demand out there. So it's an important issue that you raise and one that we will discuss. And if the ABC was to come to a change of policy on that, I imagine it would generate widespread support and debate.
Yep, starting probably in this room. Just finally, and then I'll throw and see if other senators have some follow-up questions. There's been some commentary from your counterparts in the commercial free-to-air media suggesting that you haven't really taken that much of a hit, that compared with cuts to commercial free-to-air broadcasters, you've actually gotten off pretty lightly.
Yeah.
I think Mr Warner from Channel 7 used the phrase a glancing blow, or, a flesh wound, to go back to the old Python sketch. So what's your response to the claims that the commercial broadcasters managed to get away with this without impacting on content?
Yeah, I suppose two thoughts, Senator. One is, I must say, I don't accept the argument that says because commercial media outlets have been hit hard by revenue cuts, that's an argument to cut the ABC. I think if you asked audience members, you asked readers of newspapers whether in fact they feel the quality of the content being offered, the richness and the depth, the innovation has increased or diminished in recent years given the revenue cuts, I think audiences would have quite a strong view on that. And I think, in light of those revenue cuts, what the ABC is offering is more important than ever. But I suppose I think commercial media outlets, as I've looked at what they've done what we've done. You try and save from back office areas where you can, but you've got to look at everything. And that's why, Channel 7 acts Today Tonight, local versions of Today Tonight. That's why that very popular, successful drama they did, A Place Called Home, they decided they could no longer afford to do, and now they're actually making it for Foxtel, which is quite unusual. Channel 10 have had dramatic cuts in their newsroom and cut back on their news services and cut back their morning services. So I think it's, when your revenue gets hit, you've got to look at everything. You've got to look at support services, you've got to look at programming, cutting programming altogether, or looking at the ways you make programming. I understand, Channel 9 had significant cuts to their production staff from Wide World of Sports. All those things I think are absolutely understandable given revenue cuts, and it's absolutely understandable that it's just not possible to neatly quarantine content decisions when you're facing the revenue downturns that we've faced.
Thank you. They also got a 50% cut in licence fees last year, but we can take that as a comment if you like. I might just throw to my colleagues if you maybe want to just take 5 minutes each, and then we'll close these guys out.